So we're talking about job search, right?
Yes.
Getting jobs and jobs.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was, I don't know why, but when that came up, I was immediately thinking, Jacqueline, about you. At one point, this is months ago. You were like, yeah, my husband, Jonathan, he's going to a conference for work. And we're like, oh, what conference? And you were like, well, he's going to the Small Satellite Conference. He works in the aerospace industry, so that shouldn't be funny. But I think we all immediately started laughing because it was like, wait, the Small Satellite Conference?
Versus like the large ones. Yeah.
Like, so what about the large satellite conference? He wasn't invited to that one?
And is he ever just wishing that it would like naturally come up in conversation ever? Because that's never coming up in conversation.
No, it is. It's one of those, it's like so niche. It's so different from like, regular like business conferences.
And then I'm picturing like he gets to the conference and he's at the check-in and they're like, sorry, sir, you cannot enter. You have a large satellite.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's small. And they're like, doesn't pass it's large. And then they're like, the security guards are dragging him out and he's yelling like, it's small satellite. Like, I don't know. It just.
Or he's small talking with people over the weekend and they're like, so what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I just went to a small satellite conference, and they don't know what to say. So the conversation goes stagnant because like, what? Like you have no reply. There's nothing in common with another human being around that. Yeah. Well, what did you learn? Like,
wow, yeah. I mean, how many satellites were there? Yeah. He's like.
And then knowing Jonathan, he probably went into way too much detail. And they wish they'd never asked.
He's very passionate. Yeah.
Oh, man. So anyway, jobs, there's lots of interesting jobs out there.
Let's want to move forward?
Okay. Right? Yeah.
Or do we have other job stories?
Well, I do know we've been getting some new listeners lately. So for anyone who's new in tuning into Career Sweet Spot, my name's Steve Perkins. This is Sunny Marquardt of Greenhouse Coaching. And we really work with individuals and teams to help people find greater career fulfillment and purpose and take next steps. And we often do that through our Greenhouse Method, which is kind of our unique coaching process. So the Greenhouse Method has steps for overcoming burnout, finding your career sweet spot, job transition, whether it's finding a new job or starting a business, but also like growing as a leader or kind of dialing in your productivity and your focus. And so the Greenhouse Method coaching membership is really the place where people get access to the steps, all of those steps, and they can get access to coaching. So that's kind of what we do at Greenhouse Coaching. And it's just a fun season because a lot of people are trying to, change direction or level up in their leadership. So we're doing a lot of, you've been saying lately, like we're really busy. we're just working with a lot of different teams and leaders, but also a lot of individuals with their goals. And it's fun.
Well, let's start with actually what this podcast isn't today.
Okay.
So if you see the title, it's actually not how to find a job. All right. So let's be clear. That's actually in our membership. There's lots of tools, the way to do it. Today's really about how to organize your job search. It's that the approach that you take. That's what we're going to focus on today.
Yeah. And what's the difference though? Because I think to me, I'm hearing those.
You're
I'm like, well, it's all the same, right?
Okay. So for example, there are in some of my modules, they're like, you need to write a resume. Here's how. You need to have a LinkedIn. Here's how. This is what I call networking. Here's how to do it. It's all those are the tools. Those are tools. We're not doing that today because you got to have tools, but duh, right. That's obvious. But what I find is that the approach is actually where most people get stuck before we even get to tools.
Okay. And that makes me think too, this actually kind of surprised me. The more people we were starting to help there are always these two different camps. There's one camp that is, hey, I lost my job, or like I actually need a job.
Yeah.
But there's another camp, which is, and it makes sense when you think about it, but it's people who they have a job, but they're thinking about or planning for a change. Right. And they're maybe even, usually they're wondering, should I make a change? Or if I did, where do I even start? But they're just starting to think about it. And maybe this even really applies to that. Like you got to
I think it actually applies to both. So thanks. And I'll actually sometimes call out specifically what I'm thinking around each one.
Okay. You'll be like, now this is where, stop listening. You guys stop listening now.
You're right.
You guys start listening.
Like stop and go.
Yeah.
So I thought we would start out with actually what happens. I mean, you and I have coached a whole bunch of people, and there are a lot of things that actually just happen. And what happens, I'm just going to throw some of them out. So if any come to your mind, let me know. But basically what happens is nothing. They think about it constantly.
Yeah.
And they end up going 5, 6, 7 weeks. And I'll check in with them and I'm like, so what did you accomplish this week? And they'll be like, no joke. They'll say, I organized another closet.
Yeah.
So they do everything but.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the hardest part about this business. We're always like, we should stop, just quit greenhouse and like start, I don't know, a paperclip company or something that's just simple because it's so... These things are so hard. It's like, well, I have all these chores and all these to-dos all day. And who wants to make time for this big? It's hard to like stop and do this big different thing that you don't even really know how to do. So it's easy to procrastinate this stuff.
Oh, it's so easy to procrastinate. Also, some other things that happen is family members, they start reaching out for odd things because they're like, he's free. Yeah. She's free. So then they start taking all your time and you kind of gladly give it because it's a more tangible thing to accomplish versus the deep work of finding a job. Another one is just people spin. They spin and spin and spin because they don't know which resource to start with.
Yeah.
So that's another one.
Yeah.
They also get overwhelmed by the advice.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you can Google all this stuff, but then there's 83 steps to take.
Yeah. Some articles will be like 12 things you need to do. And they're like, what? And then they reach out to family members and family members always have an opinion too. So everybody's giving them all this advice. So what happens is they freeze. So I'm going to try to, for those people, whether you're working or not working, give you some actual organizational steps.
Okay. So this is really about organizing the thought process, the steps, maybe even before you get into the tools. Actual work of changing.
Yeah. There's one step in here that I talk about with a tool. So I'll be.
Okay.
So here's what I noticed, especially for the ones that have lost their jobs. Usually people have a structure throughout their week. We go to work on Monday through Friday, and then we like rejoice that it's the weekend, if that's your normal 9-to-5 job. But people who have lost their job, lost that structure, so there's no anchor. So what I'm hoping today is to actually give you an anchor, some things to anchor to. So the first anchor is actually a notebook. It sounds so dumb. And by the way, I don't care if it's a digital notebook or a notebook, but you need actually one place to organize. So don't mix it with your journal or things like that.
Yeah.
One place to actually organize all of your thoughts because you're going to have random pop-in thoughts. You're going to get great advice. You're going to have networking conversations and you're going to forget, who did I talk to? Why did I talk to them? What did they say? How often should I follow up? And so sometimes just writing the date or a list of things to do. The other thing is that people feel like failure is a lot. And so if you can look back at your notebook, you'll feel like I did do things.
I completely agree with this point. I think it's actually so important. It's funny. Like it sounds almost throwaway, but it's not. There's so much like psychology that happens in that and emotional. Like it's the whole idea of if you have a bunch of stuff swirling in your head, write it down. It gets it out of your head and somehow releases you from it.
It does.
I think it's similar with this, like, especially if you have other stuff going on in life or you are working, it's like it physically puts it in a different box, which helps you to separate
pick up that box for that moment. Yeah, I completely agree. But I love that you even said those random thoughts that pop into your head, because the other thing is that people just have worries. Write your worries there too. If you're anything relative to that, let it go and put it there. So that is this. There's nothing more to say about that except that do it.
Yeah.
It actually makes a difference.
It's a notebook. It's not a diary.
No,
it's a notebook.
It's not a Dear Diary moment.
That's always when I'm working with people. That's always like the helpful point. It's like, what, you're telling me to write in my diary every night?
Right. Please write in your diary. Gone are the days. It's funny. People talk about diary. It feels like such a junior high thing.
It does.
Now it's I journal. But really, what's the difference?
Yeah. Nope. Just a ringed notebook.
Just a ringed notebook. And by the way, if you're anything like me, buy a pretty one. I know I'm saying that to you, but buy something that makes you feel good when you pick it up.
Greenhouse. Buy the Greenhouse Journal.
Buy that one.
For a low price of $69.99.
Right. Okay, this one, number 2, I think is actually probably of all of them one of the most important ones outside of, starting with a place to write all your thoughts. And I actually learned how to word it betterly by working at Greenhouse. So the example is that on Fridays, we get together as a company and we do something called sprint planning, which just means that we sit down and we organize what's to come in the next week. We prioritize it. I think the job seekers really just need to anchor to this.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to recommend Friday. So you can choose another day if you want, but I'm going to recommend Friday, maybe Thursday if you're like, Friday is my day off of job searching, job seeking. See, my brain goes.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Job seeking.
Seeking.
That's it. So find a spot. You probably only need an hour, maybe even 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And in that spot, what I'd like you to do is just look at the week ahead and actually say, I actually tell people, when do you feel the most energized for non-workers? Believe it or not, 10 o'clock is a very popular times for people. But also I have some really night owls who will be like 4 o'clock. And I'm like, how?
Yeah, I know.
I don't get that one, but I have a lot of people say it.
But that's the point, right? When it works for you.
Yeah.
We have somebody in the room maybe who would do it at 2 a.m. I don't know who that is.
Either, right?
But even, I mean, we talk about this all the time in the membership with like weekly planning and stuff, but it's also, you gotta help yourself by playing tricks on your own brain. So like for me with writing this morning, I wrote a blog and I did it with coffee in hand in the morning, in my jammies, at the kitchen counter, like before I got dressed, before I got ready. That helps because I was able to be like, I'm in this mode and then I'm going to get ready and switch into a different mode. And it's like, I've tried different things and that just helps. Like if I get ready first and like go to work and then try to sit down and write, I'm like, my brain's already racing with all the things at work.
That works for you.
Or maybe it's like going to a certain coffee shop or certain room in your house. That whole like kind of set yourself up in a time and place to think about this thing, have the notebook, pull out that box and go into that box for
go for it. Yes.
Hour.
Now I usually recommend 2-hour blocks. Some people can do 4-hour, but I've had a lot of people who have had one failure after another and they're like, I am not doing anything. And I'll be like, I just want 1 hour a day.
Start small.
Or 1 hour that week.
Yeah.
You have to win somewhere. Yeah. That's it. So in it, decide of all the things you have to do next week, what's the one thing you absolutely have to do? That's one question. And then number 2, just similar to what we do, I think it is good to reflect on something you learned the past week.
Yeah.
And something that was a win. Write it down in your notebook so that you can feel like, I learned something. Well, maybe I listened to a podcast that inspired this. Or, I mean, it's what we might do at work. Right?
But note how you're not starting with where everyone starts is like, how do I update my resume? What is a resume supposed to be like these days? Like, my God, now that's why you're getting stuck because you're jumping right into this huge, like hairy thing. It's like, no, notice how your first 2 steps are like, get a notebook, have a half hour to think. It's just the small wins that lead you, get momentum going.
Yeah. And if you are working, find a 30-minute spot where that you can pick your work blocks for job searching. Because that's actually more complicated sometimes. So some people are like, well, I'm going to do 4 hours on a Sunday morning, or I'm going to end my work day just an hour earlier so that I have that last hour. But you got to, how it is. If you're not intentional about it, you'll just keep spinning about it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So that one's a really important one there. Okay, so this one, it is kind of 2 combined. Okay, so it's organize the people and organize the companies. I tell people that in the very beginning to just do like a dream dump in 2 areas. Mm-hmm. One is, who is every person that you know that you might possibly want to have a conversation with? Mm-hmm. Just get it out of your head and onto the piece of paper.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, what are a list of dream companies that you would love to work at? Just dream big.
Yeah. This is good. And it's reminding me because we've been talking to a cool new company called Hunter, Huntr. We'll put the link in the show notes. But it's a really simple software app that just lets you kind of start to list those things and keep track.
Yeah.
I really like it. I think it's a great, I mean, you could use any tool, but it's very much built for this exact step.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then with the organize your people within it, you might then start to break it down. So within those work blocks, going back to point number 2, you might say, okay, in that list of people, who are 2 people I'm going to reach out to this week? So if you don't decide that, you just won't reach out. Mm-hmm. So you have to have the data dump, the brain dump, and then pick the people. And then same with the companies. Then you want to go to their websites and do some research and things like that. So that's my starting place right there.
I also think, I know this one helps because I still always have to do business development work, which is very similar. And it's, like we've actually had different meetups in the membership where there's like entrepreneurs and job seekers, and we're all together talking about this step because it's kind of the same thing where it can be overwhelming to think like, well, there's a million companies on LinkedIn I need to like reach out to. No, you need to boil it down. Like first make a list in a different place that's small and feels doable. And something about that emotionally, mentally helps you get over the hump to starting.
Yeah, I completely agree. That helps me in so many areas of my life, by the way. Just huge lists, then break it down into something tangible.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is research blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And my words specifically are don't diminish the research blocks as productive time. So I think is what I'm talking to here is there's a mental thing that I've noticed in coaching along the years is that people will say, well, I didn't get anything done because all I did was research.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, congratulations. That actually was great work. And they always feel like if I'm not, you know how it is, actually. We actually know what people say to us. They're like, if I didn't apply for 20 jobs this week on LinkedIn, I did nothing. And I'm like, that will come. And that's actually not the best approach always. But really value your research blocks. If you like got sucked into some article that inspired you, call it productive time. If you started to research a company because you're like, I'm so interested, call it productive time.
Yeah, in fact, put it on your to-do list and cross it off.
Yep.
And we had Davy Jones on recently who he was saying, I admit sometimes I even like I do a task and then I add it to my checklist so I can cross it off because it feels good. And he was like apologizing for it. I was like, no, that's a great hack. Like,
it's so great. I already did it, but somehow I want to write it down.
You got to feel like it was worth it.
Great call though, Steve. It's actually about the later.
Yeah.
It's that I can look back and remember that I did something.
Yeah.
So notice these are like small wins, but research blocks, and they're fun. Have a good time with them there. So don't diminish that one. All right. So remember I told you there was going to be one that was a little bit of a tool, but it's a little bit of the beforehand work, but I have a module on writing your brand statement. I write this on.
Okay. Can I just say something though, before you get into it? Because again, like everyone's first step, whether they go to Google or if they are talking to us, they're always like resume. What do I do with the resume is their first step. And it's like, no one gets jobs through resumes. That's not how it works. It works through people, connections, conversations. So the most important thing is to know how to present yourself, how to pitch yourself and talk about yourself in those conversations. Like there are people who know you who are going to make connections, but they don't know what you're looking for.
No, they don't.
Like I just really want to highlight this step you're talking about this is where you start, but everyone goes to resume first.
They do.
And that's where it all gets kind of lost.
Oh, it does. And whenever you get asked, tell me about yourself in an interview, people assume, well, I did the hard work of the resume, so now I'm just going to do a resume throw up.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's actually not what they mean at all. And so this is a whole nother podcast that will actually add to the notes on actually breaking down this personal brand statement. But the reason I added it in the beginning is it does so many things. And what I really want to highlight is you got to know your skills. You have to know who you are. And also often your confidence is really low, depending on the situation. Even if you're employed and you didn't lose it, there's a reason you're looking. So you might be feeling a little low in terms of motivation, or I don't know why I'm no longer enjoying my job anymore, but I feel somehow unmotivated in this space. So if you write your brand statement, you start to look at yourself on paper and go, well, a little bit of like, damn.
Yeah.
And I hope you feel that way because you should, because you got to feel that inner confidence for others to pick up on that confidence.
Totally. I completely agree. And we see that over and over. Like that's proven.
Yeah. It's one of my very favorite things. So takes the time to learn how to write a brand statement and also practice it with others as well. So
that's one where other people are helpful, whether it's a friend, a coach, whatever, having someone to bounce it off of and kind of do a few iterations.
The next one, these are, again, it's another small one. You actually mentioned it slightly, is if you are in full job search mode or you're not employed, it's really important that you find some happy place to do your, just like your work block comes. You may be one of those people who's totally fine at the kitchen table. Don't ignore this step then. But I'm a little bit of a space girl. And I know that I had some people who told me that when they created a job, why am I so struggling with that? Job seeking space, job searching space, which job seeching. That bring me back to that. A job's, now we're on job. Forget it. Would you just say it? When you're looking for a job space, how's that?
Yeah.
That's much clearer. Boom. find that space that makes you kind of happy or create it.
Yeah.
Remember we had one client who actually, she like painted a room. Like she literally like chose a color and she was like, this color makes me happy. And
I just think it's important. And everyone's noticing with like pandemic, quarantine times, like working from home, I think a lot of the lostness and a lot of it had to do with the space. And so
it did.
If people aren't going back to like a physical workspace, they're having to figure this out. I even noticed yesterday, I kind of made fun of myself because I was just working by myself at the office. And then I was like, all right, I need to do this other task. And I found myself walking over to a phone booth, and I got in a phone booth and I was in there and I was like, why did I come in here? The office is completely empty. Like, and then I don't know. I just laughed at myself because I was like, it's become such a habit to know.
You had to do a different task, so therefore you chose a different spot.
Totally. And it helped. Otherwise, I would have stayed distracted and kind of like couldn't get in the zone.
Yeah. Or you would have noticed that I left my chair out again for the 100th time. And the pen's open and not closed.
Crumbs. Always a few little crumbs on the
crumbs,
chair.
and also my seat too high, correct?
Yeah. But I just always go back to like creatives know this. If you watch, watch a documentary, watch how they work. They know this because they always have to create, which is a hard type of work. But those of us who may just be in like generalists in corporate world, we just always had the desk that we're supposed to sit at or whatever, the space you're supposed to go to.
Yeah.
So,
now we have to find that space.
Yeah.
And if you create that space and you have a whole bunch of little kids around too, you can yell at them and say, hey, I'm in my space. Right?
Don't you see the lines?
Can
you put up like an electric fence and give them the collar.
It's a signal to your family to leave you alone now. You have entered the space,
That'd
right?
be a great TikTok. The kids are like trying to run to hug you and get zapped. Like,
don't you? I bet there's so many parents who are wishing that right now.
Oh, they would love the. Yeah. It's one of those things. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's so bad. That's so inhumane. But all the parents of little kids are like, no, this is savior.
Really? Mm-hmm. And then my cheesy, not cheesy Sunday one around that one that, I just have to mention is that, and I'm a candle girl, so I'm just going to throw it just in case someone needs a feel good, is that sometimes, shut up,
Yankee, apple spiced Yankee.
Sometimes you need to, I will light a candle when I have to do something difficult. Because the candle is like a starting place.
All I can think about is the pumpkin spice SNL skit. I won't name what it was.
You remember?
Do you remember that one? The pumpkin spice candle SNL skit. Anyway.
And people just look it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now I will too. So light the candle when you have to start and then blow it out when you're done. It's just a starting and stopping if you need some sort of a signal.
Yeah.
Like that. Well, with other people, it's like get dressed nice. Like a starting, whatever. If you need a trigger.
A signal, a trigger. Yeah.
To just get yourself happy, and candles make me happy. Candles made me happy very early on in life. Should we have a whole conversation about that?
Let's talk about candles.
All right, done with the candles.
Cool.
All right, this next one, it's actually, I'm just going to call it sticky notes. Sticky notes help me in so many different areas, but I wanted to call it out for this one more specifically for those that are actually employed. This is a newer conversation I've had with people that when they're employed, they're actually feeling unproductive at work and unproductive in their job search because they're crossing paths constantly. Their brain energy is thinking, get your job done, find another job, get your job. And so the two thoughts are actually crossing each other and exhausting, and then ended up being not productive in either category.
Yeah.
So I was just coaching someone recently and I was like, put a sticky note up in front of you for those that are still working at home, and just like, this is like my actual job block, work block, even if just put it up there.
Yeah.
And don't let the other one come in. It's like a little invisible barrier back when this is a lot about candles and invisible barriers today. Don't let the other one cross over there.
Yeah.
Stop it. If the thought comes, remember that there's another time to rip that stupid sticky note off.
And so many people we talk to are trying to switch industries or like try to move from this type of role to a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to move from like being a career coach to like a small satellite consultant.
Absolutely.
Then that would be a big.
It's very natural, actually. It feels very transferable.
But they're just different. They're all together different categories. So yeah even more so. You kind of, it's hard for when they start blurring.
Yeah. So don't let them blur. So take the sticky note down and then just call it that now it's job search time. So just organize your brain. And if you don't need the sticky note, fine. You're better than me. Just make the shift. Okay, the last one, it sounds so dumb too, because you have to figure out how to get some support. But I'm not going to make it like, find some support, like some cheesy thing. You know what? I'm going to break it down a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
What I mean is have someone who is your person to maybe check in with you on what it was that was your one thing. So have another job seeker if that's what you need, or just a good friend, someone who is just going to say, did you accomplish that one thing? So that you're not like only accountable to your notebook.